We are back with the gentleman next to me, Mr. Rickford Burke. Rickford, welcome to CWS as it is, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, you know this conversation is supposed to be among you, Nigel, and myself, but this is a very busy period, so Nigel might be joining us a little later. Um, but Rickford, look, I want to start off with this. First of all, congratulations on all your due diligence for the past, umpteen years, 20 years, working to keep the PPP's feet to the fire, to get them out of government, as you rightfully put it. I want to congratulate you on all your effort. Today, Guyana has a new government, and we should be celebrating, all of us, regardless of party. If you voted for the PPPC, here's an opportunity for transformation, an opportunity for change. So I'm not going to take my words back in saying that it's an opportunity for all of us to celebrate. How do you feel, my brother? How are you feeling about this?
Great. I'm elated that the country has experienced a change. I'm happy that the country has decided to put the dark years of division, PPP division behind us. I'm happy that the young people of the country have taken ownership of this change. They're the ones that propelled the movement for change. And I'm happy. I'm happy that we can now together live in harmony and move forward to develop our country together. I'm happy that this is a multiracial coalition that demonstrates that together we can always win. I heard a previous conversation with Stacey Ryan. The PPP is an ethnic party. The younger people of Guyana are moving away from the ethnic politics, and they send a resounding message to the PPP. And what the young people of this country should do is continue to send a message to the PPP, but not only send a message, do something. Ensure that in working together to develop Guyana, they demolish any force in the country that wants to perpetuate division. If that's the PPP, demolish it. Demolish all the forces in our society that want to divide us. We have to move forward as a country together. That's the only way Guyana will develop.
You know, Rickford, you're talking about getting rid of divisiveness and so on. And throughout this conversation this evening, we're talking about a national conversation on race. How do you, first of all, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you believe we can proceed with such a conversation?
Well, I've always believed that we should have a conversation on race. I've always engaged in that conversation. I do not believe that whether it's the PNC, the PPP, the APNU should build its political support on race. Now, race is a factor in our society, but I was saying to some friends of mine, growing up in Guyana in the 80s and the 90s, I didn't understand, I did not experience racism. I've always lived in Indian villages. I've had Indian friends. I remember when we lived at Leonora, my dad was a police officer, so we moved all over the country. When we lived at Leonora Police Compound, I do not believe that whether it's the PNC, the PPP, the APNU should build its political support on race. Now, race is a factor in our society, but I was saying to some friends of mine, growing up in Guyana in the 80s and the 90s, I didn't understand, I did not experience racism. I've always lived in Indian villages. I've had Indian friends. I remember when we lived at Leonora, my dad was a police officer, so we moved all over the country. When we lived at Leonora Police Compound, my best friends were in Metamarzog. They were Indians. Whenever you couldn't find me at Leonora, I'm in Metamarzog. I remember taking former Prime Minister Hamilton Green to Metamarzog because I felt that the young men there and women did not have enough recreational facilities. So that whole area, Iflot, Strodeville, that whole area along the coast did not have sufficient recreation and sport facilities for young people. And then I was very young, I was probably about 18 years old. But I made sure, I was a member of the YSM, the youth arm of the PNC, and I made sure that I did not only take the Prime Minister to Stroatville and Iflut, where they were majority, the population was majority black. We went into Metamirazog and those villages, and I remember him giving out sports equipment. The same thing at Coven John. I lived at Coven John. I went to Hindu college. I prayed in the temple with my Hindu friends. That's how I met Bharat Jagdev. He was a teacher at the school. I was a student. So for me, this is just normal. I have lots of Indian friends. The majority of my friends are East Indians. But we should not see ourselves as an ethnicity. We must see ourselves as one identity, and that's the Guyanese identity. And hopefully now, I like President Brager's initial inauguration speech, well, not his inauguration, his installation speech. And he immediately promoted a sense of patriotism, a sense of national pride, a sense of cooperating for the benefit of the country by having everyone in the audience saying, let us cooperate for Guyana. Somehow over the last 20 years, that was missing. The PPP government made it seem like to be patriotic is to be PNC or APNU. They did not promote patriotism in Guyana. They promoted, they're like the Republicans. They were sort of anti-state because they saw the state as something that they ought to be opposed to.
You talk about this patriotism, and Rickford, I noticed it, and I hope that my pulse was right, that throughout this campaign, throughout this period, there seemed to be a resurgence of patriotism, Guyanese patriotism. People wanted to become more engaged. Among my peers, my friends, people are talking about giving back on what they can do to help to build Guyana, not with an expectation of compensation, but with giving back to the country. So there seemed to be a sort of patriotic capital. How do you think the new administration should utilize this capital?
Well, first of all, the PPP government instantly, upon its assumption of office, sought to shut out those who did not support them or those who do not look like them from the economic health and well-being of the country. They sought to undermine, impede people's survival. As a matter of fact, I remember them, myself included, they tried to sabotage you, professionals who were from the previous PNC government when they came to power. They tried to block them from getting employment. So they basically try to shut off people from people's livelihood. Now, throughout their administration, they have shut out anybody who did not support them from the economic well-being and progress of the country. What we have to do now is tap into the resources of Guyanese. And I want to stress Guyanese. Not Indo-Guyanese or Black Guyanese or what? Guyanese. We have a tremendous reservoir of Guyanese human resource abroad. We supply, arguably, the Caribbean with human resource. You go into Antigua and Grenada and St. Lucia and Dominica and Montserrat, and all of the professionals, pharmacists, nurses, doctors, teachers, they're Guyanese. What the coalition has to do is to find a way to have these people come back home to help develop the country, be it in Europe and North America. We have to reform the public service. We have to build back our national security infrastructure. We have to build the defense forces. We have to put an economic program in place to develop the country, macroeconomic as well as microeconomic. We have to enhance social development. Lots of projects that we'll have to launch, for which we'll have to get international help. And I think that as we have begun to have this discussion in diaspora, We're talking about mapping Guyanese resources throughout the country in the United States. So, for instance, if they're going to talk about public service reform, we would have a pool of people with that kind of skill to draw from, who they can send, who can go back home as consultants, rather than bringing people from Europe and all, Canada, experts who don't know the country. Use our own people. We have economists at international institutions. We can tap into that resource to come up with an effective economic development program. We have people in the United Nations and United Nations Development Program who are helping to develop other countries, stand-up country governments. We can tap into those people and have them go back home to help us with our economic development. Right now, we need some sort of social project, social development project, to ameliorate the hardship people in places like Linden and certain parts of Georgetown, communities that are economically depressed. We need some sort of project funded probably by the international community to ameliorate those hardships. At the same time, we also need foreign investment. We need to bring in industries, manufacturing plants. We need to open up our hinterlands. We have vast amount of land in Essequibo for the last 50 years of our independence that has not been developed. Let us build highways and roads to Venezuela, to Suriname, to Brazil. Open the country up. And when you build these highways, you will have manufacturers coming in, you will have industries coming in, you will have infrastructure for housing, you'll have job creation. So, and I'm pretty sure the coalition has a big, bold, macroeconomic vision for the country. And in executing that vision, we will need human resource, and we would need to harness from our large pool of human resource and skill that reside abroad to come back and help build, guide, and develop the country.
I'm just curious, Rickford, after all these years of hammering the previous administration, as you witnessed the swearing in of now President David Granger, what did that moment bring home to you?
Oh, it was so emotional. I was in church. I was actually in church at a youth convention with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who represents parts of Brooklyn, and who's a very good friend of mine. And we were literally in church looking at we saw the declaration on my phone by the Elections Commission, and the congressman put his thumbs up. And after the service, I was able to brief him, and then partially we looked at the arrival at the swearing-in service. He left, but I was able to look during the lunch break at the swearing-in service. And I felt a sense of joy. I felt elated, not at victory, but that change has come to Guyana. I felt elated because the people of Guyana stood up, particularly young people, and they insisted that the PPP government be voted out. They put behind them, as I said earlier, this evil era that saw so many people killed, so many people sidelined, so much corruption, so much criminality, so much embarrassment for the country as Guyanese. We've now put all of that behind us. And while we have to move forward, and we have to do that in peace, and we have to do it together, I think we should seek national reconciliation with our brothers and sisters who do not support this movement. But as we seek peace and reconciliation, I hope that there will be accountability, not a witch hunt, not recriminations, but accountability. We want people like Bart Jagdeo to be held accountable. I know that the Constitution does not allow for him to be prosecuted or in any way held accountable for any actions he did while he was president. But we have to have some sort of reckoning so that we can have justice for all of those people who have been killed, just for the people who have been killed by the Phantom Squad, justice for people who have been killed by allegedly by Roger Cann and his counterparts, people who were shut out from government, people who were fired. You have a lot of cases in the courts, held up in the courts because we had an administration of the court that was political. All of these things we have to sort out. But again, I want to say in the spirit of reconciliation, but we cannot forget the injustices of the past. And I hope that this coalition, while moving forward, seeking unity, peace, and reconciliation, would also seek accountability.
This paradigm, well, do you believe a paradigm shift in the way Guyanese view race is possible? And how do you personally intend to contribute to such a shift?
Of course. I did a study of voting patterns and election data for the past 20 years. And I know the data to the back of my head. Over 60% of the electorate is under age 50. Or sorry, the population. The population is under 60% of the population is under age 50. Mm-hmm. You have a large part of the electorate, over 50%, that is below age 50. They do not know what the PPP is talking about when they talk about 28 years of PNC rule. All they know is that they have gone to school. My generation and the ones that have come after, we've gone to school together. We play together. We hang out and socialize together. We go to the parties together. We interact together. We intermarry. We live together. And that entire generation has moved away or is moving away from entrenched patterns that we see in the past. Mm-hmm. And as people like Donald Ramatar and all those guys in the PPP move on, and Bar Jagdeo, who so blatantly appealed to race in this campaign, they will move on. And a new generation of leaders will emerge, as we're seeing with this coalition. And